Hey, high school literacy leaders, welcome back to Curriculum Chats. This is DLC Foster Yankee, and in this video, I'll be discussing lessons 3 and 4 in the second section of the Book of Unknown Americans unit. Starting with lesson 3. In this lesson, students will synthesize information from the Book of Unknown Americans and Immigrants in Our Own Land, which is a poem, to create new understanding about tone, analyze how themes are developed through characterization in Immigrants in Our Own Land, as well as how Santiago Baca's diction and syntax contribute to the mood, voice, and tone of a text by examining an excerpt from the Book of Unknown Americans. The text for this lesson are the Book of Unknown Americans and the poem Immigrants in Our Own Land. And the materials are the Mentor Sentence Journal, the Book of Unknown Americans Literary Elements and Narrative Techniques Note-Taking Tool, Vocabulary Journal, Mood Reference Guide, Tone Reference Guide, and the Section 2 question set. For the lesson overview, we will collaborate with peers to analyze the poem Immigrants in Our Own Land in order to deepen our understanding of how authors use literary elements and narrative techniques to illuminate meaning and themes. So now we'll take a closer look at the 5 activities that make up lesson 3. This lesson begins with the class reviewing the concepts of mood and tone, consulting the mood and tone reference guides to ensure students have a precise understanding of the terms. Then they work with a partner to discuss the mentor sentences they identified in their mentor sentences journal during the reading in the previous lesson, using the question on the screen to guide their discussion, which is what is unique about the word choice in this sentence, what is unique about the syntax in this sentence, what mood does Enriquez create in this sentence, how does she create it, what tone is conveyed by Enriquez in this sentence, how is that tone conveyed, what does the sentence contribute to the ideas in the text? How does a sentence expand your understanding of a character or theme? And the teacher might also choose to augment this lesson with a formal mentor sentence study using the Working with Mentor Sentences tool. In the next activity, students follow along as either the teacher or one of their peers reads aloud the poem Immigrants in Our Own Land by Jimmy Santiago Baca. It is a close reading, so there are some directions for what they will do in each stanza found here on the screen. They repeat the steps for each stanza and discuss the final question with their small group. While the title of the poem leans students toward discussing immigration issues, the cell in the poem is literal. Students should find evidence that illuminates the connection between the immigrant experience and prison. The poem's themes are similar to some of those found in the Book of Unknown Americans, even though the plots are different. Baca's speaker is incarcerated, and Alma and Arturo's experiences in Delaware are from somewhat of a self-imposed prison. They chose to move to the States because they believed it was the best way to help their daughter. The connection between Baca makes between being an immigrant and being incarcerated is deliberately ambiguous, but accessible for students of varying abilities based on their previous study of Enriquez's text. This activity is designed to be completed in steps. It is best if students finish each section before they receive directions for the next. So we wouldn't give them all of this at the same time. This allows them to build knowledge and understanding as they analyze. To support students, the teacher might need to provide a definition of free verse. One is provided in the teaching notes. If students are struggling to analyze poetry, the teacher might model the protocol for the first stanza through a think aloud. The teacher might also consider engaging in vocabulary instruction prior to the reading. For activity 3, students discuss the questions on the screen in small groups and write down the answers in their learning log. Next, they set up a new literary elements and narrative techniques note-taking tool for Immigrants in Our Own Land and write down at least 4 entries on the tool. There is a lot of information available in the teaching notes regarding the tone, thematic ideas, and perspective found in the poem. To support students, the teacher might direct them to the chart on the tone reference guide that categorizes and presents examples of words to use when identifying and describing the tone of a text. Moving on to activity 4. In this optional activity, students reread the quote on the screen from Mayor and consider the questions. What is the tone of this section of text? What words or phrases led you to this conclusion? How does punctuation play a role in helping you discern the tone of the passage? They write the quote and their analysis in their literary elements and narrative techniques note taking tool. This optional activity provides an additional opportunity for students to work with tone. The teacher might augment this lesson with a mentor sentence study using the Working with Mentor Sentences tool. Students who struggle to discern tone may benefit from using the tone reference guide with this activity. In activity 5, the teacher shares the thematic idea that life experience often influences decisions we learn as we grow. Then, yeah, I need to say that again. Let me start from the top. In this activity, the teacher shares the thematic idea that life experience often influences decisions we learn as we grow. Then, students read and annotate pages 115 through 143 of the novel, considering the question on the screen. How is this theme developed in both the poem and the novel? They write down at least 3 entries in their literary elements and narrative techniques note taking tool, focusing on tone, mood, and theme, and also write down new or interesting words in their vocabulary journals and strong or interesting sentences in their mentor sentence journal. So that concludes lesson 3, which brings us to our cub, which I based on activity 4. We have students will know the definition of tone. They'll understand how authors use literary elements and narrative techniques, such as tone, to illuminate meaning and themes. And they'll be able to analyze a passage in the Book of Unknown Americans for tone using the literary elements and narrative techniques note taking tool. Moving on to lesson 4. In this lesson, students will work with partners to identify themes in the Book of Unknown Americans in order to deepen their understanding of how authors use literary elements and narrative techniques to illuminate meaning and themes. I think I skipped something. They'll make inferences and use evidence to support their understanding of themes in the Book of Unknown Americans. Write responses that demonstrate their understanding of themes developed across texts by comparing the Book of Unknown Americans with Immigrants in Our Own Land, as well as analyze how themes are developed through characterization by creating a Venn diagram to compare evidence from the Book of Unknown Americans and the Wanderers. That should probably be Immigrants in Our Own Land instead of the Wanderers, because they don't use the Wanderers in this lesson. The text for this lesson, we have the novel and again the poem Immigrants in Our Own Land. The materials for this lesson are the Literary Elements and Narrative Techniques Note Taking tool, the Theme Reference Guide, and the Section 2 question set. For the lesson overview, we will work with partners to identify themes in the Book of Unknown Americans in order to deepen our understanding of how authors use literary elements and narrative techniques to illuminate meaning and themes. And there are 5 activities, 2 of which are optional. So lesson 4 begins with one of those optional activities. The teacher explains that theme is the overriding message in a literary text and that novels often have multiple prevalent themes. Then students consider questions from the Section 2 question set to determine themes in the Book of Unknown Americans and discuss their answers with a partner before recording them in their learning logs. This optional activity is designed to provide scaffolded support for students who might struggle with determining emerging themes in the novel. The teacher might also direct them to the theme reference guide. To support students and teachers, there are multiple choice versions of each question in the teaching notes. Next, students determine emerging themes in the novel by discussing with a partner the emerging themes they identified in the homework reading and adding to or revising their literary elements and narrative techniques note-taking tool based on new insights gleaned from the discussion. Then the class discusses the responses. To support students, the teacher might track and display the themes on chart paper for them to reference, add to, and refine throughout the unit. If they are not able to easily discern themes or ideas on their own, the teacher can tell them to consider the ideas of culture, ethnicity, gender, adversity, triumph, or life experience when completing their literary elements and narrative techniques, note taking tools, or the theme reference guide. For the next activity, students work with a partner using a Venn diagram to compare and contrast themes in Immigrants in Our Own Land to those of the Book of Unknown Americans. Then the teacher facilitates a class discussion. In activity 4, students reflect in writing about their understanding of literary elements and narrative techniques by responding to the questions on the screen in their learning log. The teaching notes suggest collecting students' responses and using them as a formative assessment for adjusting instruction if needed. If students need additional support with understanding the concepts, the teacher might redirect them to the appropriate reference guide. To wrap up lesson 4, we have an optional activity in which students read and annotate pages 144 through 155 of the novel and write down 7 new entries in their literary elements and narrative techniques note taking tool, one for each literary element and narrative technique studied so far. We have our cub that should say lesson 4. This cub comes from activity 3. We have students will know emerging themes in Immigrants in Our Own Land and the Book of Unknown Americans. They'll understand how themes are developed through characterization and be able to compare themes in Immigrants in Our Own Land and the Book of Unknown Americans using a Venn diagram. So that's a wrap for this video. I welcome your feedback and look forward to hearing from you either on Twitter, via email, or in the comments. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe so you never have to worry about missing a video. Thanks for watching.